All right, we're on to 1-2, which is greatest common factor and least common multiple. So, one thing I want to kind of emphasize is that all your math life, you've probably been told that you need least common multiple. I want you to be more concerned with common multiple. Because whether it's the least or not, we can always simplify back to get us to the least common multiple. So, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, our essential question today is how do I find factors and multiples? Okay? So, let's go to our vocab that we need. So, GCF, or greatest common factor. So that is the largest number that two or more numbers have in common. And actually, another word we're going to use for number right here is, now that we know it, is factor. Okay, so a little small part of a number. The LCM, or least common multiple, is the smallest number that two factors can multiply into. Okay. Okay, so, and traditionally a lot of people have a hard time keeping these two things straight, greatest common factor and least common multiple. For our purposes, I actually want you to not worry so much about whether it's the least or the greatest. Okay, figure out a common factor and a common multiple, and we can work with it from there. So if you don't initially get the greatest or the least right off the bat, it's okay. We're going to work with that. Okay? So the least common multiple is the smallest positive number that is a multiple of two or more numbers. The easiest way to find the least common multiple is to list out the multiples of each number and stop when you find one in common. Start with the largest number to make it even easier. The opposite of that is the greatest common factor is the largest number that divides exactly into two or more numbers. Think, what is the biggest number that goes into both or all of these numbers? Start with the smallest number. Okay? So let's think about that for a second. One of the main reasons we're going to use this is going to help you reduce fractions. It is by far the most common way you're going to apply greatest common factor and least common multiple is with fractions. Okay? So here's kind of a cool way to remember factors and multiples. So let's go down here. Okay? So let's say I want to find all of the factors of the number 24. Okay? So you've got these two groovy rows right here, right? So here's what we're going to do. So let's do the easiest. What two numbers multiply together to 24? So let's do the easiest. 1 and 24, right? Then we've got 2 and 12. And actually just keep them together. Let's draw lines in between them. We have 3 and 8 and 4 and 6. And I don't think we have any others. I think those are all the factors, right? Because you could keep going 6 up here, but then you're repeating what you have down here. So those are all of your factors. Let's say that I wanted to find the greatest common factor between 24 and 60. Okay, so I'm going to draw myself another F over here. And of course, you're not going to draw the F every time, but it kind of just helps you lay these out. Okay, so I would have 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 10, 4 and 15, and 5 and 12. After that, I'm going to start, oh, and 6 and 10, sorry. Okay, after that, I'm going to start repeating factors. So if I look at the two sets of numbers that I have here, where are my common numbers? Well, we've got 2's and 3's and 4's, 2's, 3's, and 4's, and of course 1. Do I have a 24? No. Do I have a 12? Yes. Do I have an 8 over here in 60? No. Do I have a 6? Yes. So of all those numbers that I highlighted, what is my biggest number? Well, that's a 12, right? So, sorry, I should have done this too. Okay. So, the GCF of 60 and 24 is 12. Now, just for a second, and I know that we're not doing fractions yet, but I want you to kind of check this out. Okay? If I try to reduce the fraction 60 over 24. Now, let's just say that I don't have any idea what my biggest factor is that I can take out. Let's just say I know they're both even numbers, so I can divide it by 2, because we talked about that last section, right? So if I divided both of those by 2, I would get 30 over 12. Let's do that again, divide by 2. And I would get 15 over 6. And I think that there's one more. 15 over 6 is not quite simplified. And I can't divide those by 2, but I can divide them by 3. So now I would get 5 over 2. And 5 over 2 is simplified. I can't go any farther than that, right? So I want to go back to the numbers that we divided by every time. Oops. Whoa, let's go back. Sorry about that. Let's highlight that instead of crossing it out. That would be better. So we divided it by 2, and then another 2, and then a 3. So I want you to think about, what is 2 times 2 times 3? Well, that is 12. And what did we say the greatest common factor of 60 and 24 is? That is 12. That's not a coincidence. That's the way that's supposed to work out, okay? If you know your greatest common factor, you can reduce a fraction in one step. But if you don't, it's perfectly okay. You can take 2 or 3 steps until you get better at it. It's not a problem. So even though greatest common factor is what you've kind of always been told, let's just go with a common factor and work from there, okay? Okay, so let's go to our multiples now. So say I want you to find the lowest common multiple of 9 and 4. LCM of 9 and 4. Okay, again, when we're working with this, we're not always going to worry about the lowest, so let's just worry with the common multiples, okay? So over here we're going to put our multiples of 9, and over here we're going to put our multiples of 4. So let's just count by 9s, okay? 45 and 54. Let's just stop there. Now let's count by 4. So we've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. Oh, wait a minute. 36 sounds familiar. They both have that in common. Look at that. Okay, so our lowest common multiple of 9 and 4 is 36. Now, the easiest way to find a multiple, a common multiple, is just multiply these two together. When we get into doing this with fractions or anything else that we're applying it to, I don't want you to worry about what's the lowest, because you can always multiply that back, okay? Or, sorry, simplify that back. So if we wanted to find common multiples of 9 and 4, we could use 36, we could use 72, we could use 108. All of those are multiples of both 9 and 4. So don't get hung up on the lowest. I know you've been taught that for a long time, but if you can find the multiples that they have in common, it's going to make it easy for you. And the easiest way to do that is just multiply them together. Okay? So let's see. Go ahead and on your own, I want you to summarize what the most important thing was that you learned from this section right down here. And we can talk about those in class. Okay? Awesome. Thanks.